Welcome to the Enable Podcast. My name is Jonté Joe, host of the Enable Podcast. I'm delighted that you would decide to join in and listen today to the Enable Podcast, either on Spotify or Apple or even YouTube. I'm delighted that you would decide to listen to someone so flawed and so illiterate and unarticulated as me. I'm just so thankful for that. I am recording from rural Hall, North Carolina at my home church. And I'm interning here, so I guess the question would be, am I working hard or hardly working? I'm still trying to figure it out, just trying to stay cool. I have a little bit of a simple thought today, but obviously if you've ever listened to my podcast, you know I can turn a simple thought into a 20-minute thought in a heartbeat. But I'm not going to try to do that. I'm going to try to be mindful of your time. But realistically, if you listen to this podcast, you see how long it is. You probably have enough time to listen to it. But anyways, that's not the point. All right. But I'm going to give a simple thought that I've been chewing on for a little bit. It's not going to be anything, again, it's not going to be anything complex. It's not going to be anything you haven't heard of before. But I find that reminders are sometimes the best things that Christians need to go through life, go through being enabled. So with that being said, I'm going to read in Romans 8. It's a very familiar passage. If you've ever went down the Romans road, been taught the Romans road, been in a service where they went through the Romans road, or you've been in a service where this verse was quoted, I would no doubt not doubt that. But Romans 8:28, and it's not where the podcast is going to be, but I'm going to give a little bit of a read a few verses before my main verse. But the Bible says in Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. And this is the verse I'm going to read in, verse number 31. Verse number 31 says, what shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? If God be for us, who can be against us? I'm a truly blessed man. I'm a truly blessed young man. I'm a truly blessed young preacher. When I look back on my life in these 7 years that I've been saved, when I look back on my life in these some 13 years that I've been riding a bus to church in the bus ministry here, when I look back on my life when I've in the past 5 or 6 years when I've been preaching, when I look back on my life in my years in Christian school and public school and now in Bible college, when I look back on my life in working at a church, working at an electrical company, when I look back on my life at all these things, I can truly say I've been blessed. Anybody looking at my life, they can say the same thing. Anybody looking at my circumstances surrounding my life and the circumstances surrounding my upbringing, they would say the same thing. I think it's no doubt and would be a lie to say that I've been truly blessed beyond measure. I've had people invest in me. I've had godly people invest in me. I've had people who've handed me money. I've had people who've invested encouragement, money, prayers, tears into my life. So it's needless to say that I've been blessed beyond measure. But with that being said, I have people who are for me, and I've had people who have been very vocal about being for me. But with that being said, with that comes people who are not for you. With that comes people who are against you. With that comes people who may not like you, who may dislike you, who may hate you, who may be very vocally against you, or maybe not so vocal. Maybe some who may say they're for you, but they're against you, and you can see that. I have those who constantly claim to be for me, but time tells that they may not be. Sometimes those who are the most vocal about being for you are those who can easily turn their back on you, or those who can easily talk about you behind your back. They're easily the ones that stab you in your back. But with that being said, as the Apostle Paul reminds us here in chapter 8, in verse number 31, he says, with that being said, what shall we say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? And I find those who truly live out the verse and truly live out the verse in number 28, you see this is a conditional verse. It says, all things work together for them who love God. If you don't love God, these verses don't apply to you. If you aren't called according to His purpose, these verses don't apply to you. And I find a lot of times in my life, and maybe you've experienced this in yours if you're anything like me, that you find that sometimes you get a little bit bitter about the people who are against you. You get a little bit of bitter about the things that are going against you and the circumstances in your life that aren't necessarily great for your image and not necessarily great for what you want to accomplish in your plan. Key word, your plan. But I find that the Apostle Paul is reminding us here that no matter what circumstances against you, no matter who is against you, no matter what is against you, no matter where you're at in your life, no matter what circumstances seem to blindside you, it says, if God be for us, who can be against us? Now, he knew the answer of that question when he asked it, but I think it's more of a sarcastic statement. Paul is sitting there and he's writing to the Romans and he's saying this. And he's saying, if God be for us, if God be for you, who can be against you? Who could possibly come and overwhelm you? Who could possibly come and win the battle? And let me remind you, in our life, it may seem like everybody's winning the battles. It no doubt seems like Satan sometimes is winning the battles, whether it's with compromise, whether it's with sin. It no doubt feels like Satan is winning the battle, but let me remind you that Satan may win that battle, but he will never win the war if you are a child of God. God will always win that victory and the outcome. At the end, if you read, I've heard it's more of a cliche now, but it's true. You say you read the back of the book and we win. And that's so true as a Christian. We can read the back of the book and rest assured that God will win every single time. And He will win the victory and He will win the war. But no doubt sometimes as Christians it gets difficult, it gets tiring, it gets frustrating because it seems like everything around you is coming at you from every direction. It seems like everyone around you is looking down on you. It looks like everyone around you is being against you. And even for someone, from my perspective, who's been blessed beyond measure, who's had people for him from day one, who's had a church, a big church, full of people who no doubt invested time and effort and prayer and money and encouragement in me from day one, ever since I got saved. I understand that. But with that being said, sometimes us as Christians, we can feel like our backs are against the wall and that there's nothing good going to come out of our situation or our circumstance, where it feels like nothing good is going to come out of our home life, where it feels like nothing good is going to come out of our work life, our financial life, where it feels like nothing good is coming out of our spiritual life, when it feels like we're on a dead end. And most of the time when we are on a dead end, it's because of our own doing. It's not because of the circumstances around us. It's because we got slack in our circumstances, and we got slack because we saw everything around us and we got comfortable. And because of that, our back came against the wall, and Satan seems like he's not pulling any punches. You may feel like that today. But with that being said, we can rest in the fact that there isn't a single opposition that can stand against us. There isn't a single circumstance or single opposing force that can stand against us when God is for us. I'm thankful. I've had a lot of people for me. I've had a bus worker for me. I've had a Sunday school teacher for me. I've had a youth pastor for me. I've had a pastor for me. I've had college professors for me. I've had friends for me, spiritual friends, great godly heroes that I look up to for me. But there ain't nothing like God being for you. There's no feeling like that. Because when God is for you, nothing can stand against you. No person, no thing, no circumstance can stand against you. And I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that God saved me. I'm thankful that God called me to preach. I'm thankful that God called me to a church to serve. I'm thankful that God sent me to a Bible college to serve Him. I'm thankful for all these things. So let me remind you, Christian, no matter where you are today, you can rest assured in the fact that if God is for you, nobody can stand against you. If God is for you, nobody can beat you in the long run. Nobody can beat you in the victory. And I'm thankful for that. Jesus never fails. So many souls have tested him throughout the test of time. So many still reach out to him with broken hearts and minds. And every one of them will say, without a question, they will find that Jesus never fails. Jesus never fails. You may have won the battle, Satan, but you will not prevail. Jesus has never failed. And I'm thankful for that. If God be for us, who can be against us? Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jonté Joe with the Enabled Podcast. We'll see you next time on the Enabled Podcast or wherever your streaming network may be, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. You have a great rest of your day. God bless you. I hope this was a blessing to you. Have a great time. I'll see you next time on the Enabled.